Sloughs here, and today I'll be doing something different. Well, actually no, I did this last year. So I guess it's my yearly anniversary. I'll be doing a Master Duel hand trap tier list. As you can see, I had a long break from this game. I just had my first newborn child with my wife a few months ago in October. So I didn't play Master Duel for a few months until December. So I've been back on the game for about a month and a half. When returning to the game, you want to know a bit about the meta, who's the new ones, if any new decks have entered, what's the best hand traps. So when looking for it on YouTube, I couldn't find any current hand trap tier lists. I don't know why no one's doing it. Maybe I'm blind, or maybe YouTube isn't showing them up. But yeah, I thought if you can't find it, you might as well do it yourself. Disclaimer now, as I said, I've only been back to the game for a month and a half. I can only base the best hand traps I believe from my experience throughout these few weeks. And of course, you usually base them off the best meta decks as well. The best decks being still Tenpai Dragons, probably the best deck there is still. And they're probably the most popular because I face so many and it's frustrating. And then I'm not gonna try and go in order, so I'll just say who I think are the top decks. Labyrinth, Branded, Fire King Snake Eyes, Voiceless Voice, Math Mech, they're solid as well. Yubel, well, I nearly forgot Yubel. I don't want to list the whole thing, but those are genuinely the best decks in this current format. So of course you have to base the hand traps around them. And secondly, as you can see on the screen, I don't have every hand trap, and I only have S, A, and B tier. Now the reason being, I don't want to waste everyone's time. I don't want to make a video 30, 40, 50 minutes long talking about useless trash bum hand traps. I mean, come on, who's going to be playing in this current meta? Ghost Dog, or whatever, the dog one what gives you life points, or Retaliating C, or like, or was it Contact C? I don't remember. But no one's going to play them. What's the point talking about them? So everything you see here is either B tier or above. Anything you don't see here, like Phantasme, I think it's the card name, the Link one, Skullmeister, if you don't see them here, they're C tier or below. And I just don't see what's the point talking about them. You're not gonna have room to play them when you can play any of these. So I'm trying to make this as quick as possible for everyone and to give you quick information, even though this video will probably still be a decent amount of time, but still I want to make it shorter by removing the trash. I also want to point out, as you can see here, I have Triple Tactics Thrust and Talents. I know they're not hand traps, but they are going second cards. They can also go first, but so can all the other hand traps. Well, actually, apart from the Mochamis, these ones usually are good because of how many hand traps are in this, in Yu-Gi-Oh today. And I'm not going to include cards like Raigeki and Harpies, because don't get me wrong, they're great cards, but they're only for specific decks these days, aka Tenpai, or if you're playing cards like Triple Tactics Thrust. Now thirdly, the last thing before we get onto the hand trap tier list, if you are new to my channel and haven't subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button now to be up to date with all my Yu-Gi-Oh Master Duel content, deck profiles, or you know what, maybe I can make this a quarterly thing, hand trap tier lists. Every 3-4 months I'll do another one, or to be updated when I live stream. Let me not waste your time anymore. Let's get on with what I think are the best, great, and good hand traps. I should also change these to S for staple, A for amazing. We'll just do bums, okay? Even though they're not actually bad hand traps. But listen, if you're not A or S, you're a bum. Let me start with the 3 hand traps let me just get them out of the way. They're a staple in all decks, or at least 99% of decks. And they are Ash, Maxi, and Imperm. Maxi, I mean, it's the greatest hand trap. It needs to be banned, or at least limited at this point. It's too strong. A draw, no drawbacks. If you go first, set up, and then as soon as it's your opponent's draw phase and you drop a Maxi, honestly, it just feels like you should just surrender. It's just too strong. It's too strong. Of course, it doesn't hit every single deck. Like Labyrinth can play through it quite well. Voiceless Voice, but actually, you could even say Tenpai Dragons, since most of their special summoning is in the battle phase, but by that time you're gonna have to draw something amazing. But what can you really do at damage step? But majority of like rogue decks, tier 3s, tier 2s, tier 1 decks, Maxi is just strong. And even as I said, against Voiceless Voice or Labyrinth, you can still get 1 or 2 draws from them. And if they did want to extend their plays, you kind of stop them from doing that. Ash, an amazing card, just stops special summoning or searching from the deck. It stops so many cards. See, where I say Maxi isn't that good against some decks, I don't see a deck that doesn't hurt or doesn't get hurt by Ash. Ash, it might not be the most damaging, but depending on what your opponent has in their hand, it could be. Let's say Tenpai Dragons only had their quick spell. Ash that could be their turnover. Again, that's if that was the only card they had to get a Tenpai Dragon out. It stops Big Welcome. It stops, it stops, like I said, every single deck this can stop. The fact that Ash can be used against any deck just isn't, it's a staple. There's no one can say no. Like, this is a guaranteed must 3, and Imperm is very similar in terms of it can technically be used against any deck. Even graveyard decks will eventually have a monster on the field that could use an effect, unless they're playing Skill Drain or some trash deck like that. But majority of the time, there will be an effect on the field, and this can't be called by. That's just what makes this amazing. It can be used on either player's turn, and if you do go first and you set it, it could like stop a zone for spells and traps, which does come in handy. It really does. These 3 are hands down the best hand traps you should have in your deck. 3 of each. To me, these are the guaranteed 9 you should have in your deck. And then when you get to the next spots for your hand traps, that's when you can start to decide what would you rather have, depending on what you struggle to the most with your deck. Do you know what? Let's kind of finish off the S tier. You have to put Shifter here. The only issue with Shifter, where I see some people put him in like A tier or B tier, is because not every deck can run him. And yeah, but at the same time, you shouldn't base a hand trap on because it's not viable for many decks. It's about how devastating it can be against most decks. And Shifter, they limited him for a reason, which is weird because they didn't limit Maxi yet, but okay. Shifter is too powerful against certain decks. It just turns off their turns like Tearlaments. It even hurts decks like Labyrinth when, even though they're traps, they don't want their traps to get banished. They would prefer them in the graveyard. Tenpai Dragons, it could hurt them because they can't then use their graveyard effects to revive a Tenpai Dragon from the graveyard. I could list a bunch of decks that Shifter hurts. Everyone knows how powerful Shifter is. It's easy S tier. It's just that not that many decks can use it because decks want to use their graveyard. Now there is one more card what I feel like could be S tier. It's S or A, and hopefully I don't butcher the name, but Fuelas. Part of me says S tier because it's just like a downed version of Maxi. Not as powerful, but still can be powerful. But because you can't draw from every single special summon, and some decks like Voiceless Voice do not care about using an extra deck at all, it's tough because like S tier is like the best of the best, and putting Fuelas on the same tier with Maxi just doesn't seem right, but at the same time it's still powerful in its own right. Yeah, do you know what? I'll put S tier. I'm going to try and order these as well. I will put Shift at the bottom though, just because it can't be played in so many decks that you're rarely going to see it. But if everyone was playing Shifter, it would probably be second or first. But because it's the least played, I'm going to put it at the bottom. I'm going to keep Imperm and Ash ahead of Fuelas, just because I do feel like some decks aren't as affected by it as much, because some may just add the card to the hand and then special summon from the hand, which they don't get the draw, and some decks don't need to go into the extra deck straight away. Like one of my main decks, Rescue Ace, I could just sit on Turbulence and Hydrant. Branded could just set up their spells and traps. Voiceless Voice, as I mentioned, they don't need to go into the extra deck. Tenpai Dragons, again, once they're in battle phase, there's not that much you can do to them. Don't get me wrong, it's still a powerful hand trap, and I do think everyone should play it. But the thing is, I don't think you need to play at 3. I could see some people get away with just playing 2. I've put in S because I do think everyone should play them though. because, you know, in the end of the day, if you do drop this on your opponent, and as long as they aren't a deck like Voiceless to Voice, it's going to slow them down. Regardless, it might stop them from going into certain plays and let them end on a weaker board than they could have ended. They could have ended on a very unbeatable board, but because of it, they had to go with a breakable board. Or you go and use it against a deck like Mathmech and they're pissed. They just instant lose. Or they're gonna let you draw like 15 cards. So yeah. So yeah, out of the hand traps, these are the S tiers. If I see any of them in my hand, apart from Shifter, I'm happy. Now we won't go from A to B, we're just gonna go from in order. So Triple Tactics. See, I will put this in A tier, but to me, I feel like it's either the low A tier or high B tier. But I'm gonna put it in A tier just because there's so many hand traps flying all over the place now. Because people are expecting Triple Tactics these days, they can be played around. Like Fuelas and Maxi could be done in draw phase, and that's it. You can't use your Triple Tactics unless they have another card like Ash. Triple Tactics can't be used if they use Imperm. So there are ways to play around it. That makes me think it could be B tier, because there are times when if I played Triple Tactics and I don't get to use it because my opponent either has it in perm or they use their Maxi and draw phase, and it's like, well, now it's just in my hand, it's dead. But it's also amazing going second, because if your opponent does have a board set up, you can either take control, or if you need the draws, you can go for the draws. So it's still powerful. Don't get me wrong, when Triple Tactics can be used, it's powerful. And when I see my opponent use it on me, it's always like, oh fuck, what's gonna happen? But when you have it and you don't get to use it, it's just you basically start off with one less card. So I would put it in A tier, especially with the more charmies in the game now. That just adds in another 3 to 6 hand traps into the game. Nibiru, I personally putting it in B tier. It does nothing to Tenpai unless they do everything on main phase 1. But then even then, if they do have their field, your Nibiru is useless. Decks like Labyrinth, even branded, unless the branded player overextends, they can stop with 4 summons. Voiceless Voice won't care. Even decks like Yubel, they will get their Yubel fusion onto the field, so you don't even get to use your Nibiru. I just feel like Nibiru is one of them cards where when your opponent really doesn't expect it, it can be so painful for them. But when people are expecting it, it's just absolutely useless, because the opponent will usually play around it. They'll either have a negate on the field, or they just won't get to the 5th summon, and it's just a waste of a card in your hand. I've never really been a big fan of Nibiru. Don't get me wrong, when I get hit by one, I fucking hate it. I mean, one of my sound effects on stream isn't for Nibiru, but I just feel like it comes off more as a dead card in your hand rather than it actually game-winning hand trap. And I just feel like with the current meta, most of them can play around it or stop Nibiru, and when that is the case, that to me just makes Nibiru weaker. But on the plus side, because people again aren't expecting it because it's not as powerful anymore, or right now, they won't expect it and they may get greedy or won't play around it, and boom, you hit them and GG. DD Crow, B tier. Usually you have to wait for your opponent to set something up for their graveyard, and then you just snatch it from them. So it is good against Tenpai Dragons if it's not a damage step. Can stop some Labyrinth cards, can stop Voiceless Voice cards. It can stop. Most of the top tier decks do require their grave, but it's more of a card where it has to, it's like a sniper. You have to time it perfectly when to use it. It doesn't negate the effect, so yeah, you really have to pick and choose the right card at the right time. And when it does come off, it's great, but when it doesn't, it could just be like a little jab to your opponent, but what you want to give them is the right hook. So yeah, still B tier, still a good card if you can fit it, but I mean, there's so many better cards in my opinion. Ghost Mourner, I'm gonna put it in B tier because I'm putting Veiler in A tier. I don't know, Ghost Mourner, DD Crow, around the same. I can't put Ghost Mourner in the same tier with Veiler, and I can't put Veiler in the same tier as Imperm, because I just feel like that's the order of how they go, the negation hand traps. Imperm can't be called by, while Veiler can, but at least with Veiler, you don't have to wait like Ghost Mourner. Ghost Mourner needs the monster to be special summoned, and then you have to activate it straight away. I don't like that. I like the option of choosing when to, and especially that it can be normal summoned, special summoned, but it has to be in main phase 1. or well, main phase 2, main phase 1, but it has to be in the main phase, which is an issue, and it has to be your opponent's main phase. So it's not like Imperm where you can use on your own turn. So it does have its drawbacks. That's why Imperm's just a GOAT for hand negation. But still, I do like Valor. I think it's still a very good card. Better than Ghost Mourner. I don't like that Ghost Mourner has to use it only when the monster is special summoned. If the card said you can negate a special summoned monster, so let's say there's like 4 special summoned monsters in the field and then you could just use it then, that would be amazing. This card would be, oof. Yeah, it would just be an amazing card, but it has to be once it's special summoned, and that's just, nah. It can come in handy, but that's why it's B tier. Bestials. No, I would say B tier, because even, look, the best deck is Tenpai. They don't care about it, but it does hurt some of the other like tier 2s and tier 3 decks, but then some of them aren't light or dark, so that's what I'm saying. It really depends on the format. When there's a lot of light and dark decks, then it's an A tier. But when there's only a few, that's when it's B tier. And because the best deck currently isn't, I feel like it's better for B tier. Unless you're playing a light or dark. Yeah, that's another thing. If you're playing a light or dark deck yourself, then it could be an A tier. But if you're playing a deck like Fire King Snake Eyes, I can't remember if Ritual Beasts have light or darks, but I feel like they're all like winds and things like that. But you get my point. If you're not playing them as well, it's just not as good. Still, they're great when they get put off and when you go against the right deck, like a math mech. But again, light and darks aren't dominating the meta right now. It's, yeah, I mean, it feels like 50-50. Some are light and dark, some aren't. So to me, it's a B tier. I wouldn't personally play a hand trap if there's a 50% or 40% chance that I'll go against a light or dark deck. I want to use the hand traps that are going to be able to be used most of the time, you know, like 8 out of 10 of my games. While Bestials feel like you might use them 3 or 4 times out of 10 matches, and yeah, it's just not worth it in my opinion. But when they do get off, they're still powerful. Psy Frame Gamma, to be honest, personally, I would put this guy in C or D tier, but I just feel like there will be some people out there thinking it's still a great card, because don't get me wrong, the card itself is amazing, like it's powerful, and it's so powerful that they limited it, and that's why I put it at C or D tier, because to me it's not worth it. You have a 50-50 chance of getting Driver or Gamma, you know, that you have to play a vanilla, and that's just not worth it in my opinion. Some decks can play it, like Tenpai could play if they want, because their whole deck is hand traps, so they don't care. But when your deck needs its consistency, that Driver is just not worth it. Again, you have a 50-50 chance of getting Driver over Gamma. That is trash. That's trash. So me personally, I put a C, D tier, but I can imagine some people putting it B, so I'll just put in here. Ghost Ogre, I love this card right now. I'm putting an A tier, and I'm putting it as a high A tier. Some people may disagree, but I love this card right now. It hits most of the top tier decks. It hits Yubel, their Nightmare continuous spell. It hits Tenpai Dragon's Field, which is like, it's an amazing hit. It can hurt Fire Kings if you get their continuous or field spell at the right time. Hurts cards like IP and SP Leo Knight, and a big one, Appaloosa, when they chain to your effect and then you chain Ghost Ogre. It's just beautiful. I would definitely recommend anyone playing Ghost Ogre. It hits most of the meta decks. Purelia, I would put this in B tier. Don't get me wrong, it's powerful and you're guaranteed a draw usually, because most decks do at least normal summon once. But I'm putting in B tier because they have to special summon or normal summon from the hand, and most decks special summon from the deck or from the extra deck. Yeah, you might get 1 or 2 draws, and usually that's it. So would you play a hand trap for just 1 or 2 draws? Again, those 1 or 2 draws can come in handy. 1 for 1, I'd rather play like a Veil or a Ghost Ogre. And 2 draws for 1, that's when it comes a bit better value. But again, you're not guaranteed the 2 draws. It really depends on the deck you're facing against. And as I said, most decks special summon from the deck or the extra deck, so it's good. I would probably put it at the top of B tier, but I would rather play those A tiers above it. Droll, I will put this at B tier. I'll put below Nibiru, but ahead of Ghost Spawner, DD, and Gamma. It's kind of similar to Nibiru, where it depends on the deck you're going against, and in the current meta, most of the decks don't search that much. Tenpais could fall for it if they use like a Pots card, or if they use their field and then they wanted to get their quick spell. Basically, if a Tenpai Dragon opens bad, then it's great, because like they need their multiple searches. But if they only needed one search, then it's useless. Labyrinth, they don't care. Branded can play over it because they just send to the graveyard. I mean, even Rescue Ace, once we get like a one search, if we have a decent hand, we can just get Turbulence onto the field and set them instead. There are decks that still it could be annoying to them, like Yubel, Mathmech, Voiceless Voice. So no, okay, I'll say it's better than Nibiru. And I would put ahead of Bestials. Actually, do you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, it may not hit all the best decks or the best deck itself and some of the top tiers, but it still hits some of the others. I mean, it is also another counter to Fulas and Maxi. So actually I'll put ahead of Pirellia as well. The more I talk about Droll, the more I'm thinking, do you know what, it's better than I thought. Because yeah, it does counter the drawing cards, and it does slow down some of the top tier decks. This one's tough. Now I could actually see it as either a low A tier or a high B tier. Do you know what? I'm gonna still keep it in the top of B tier, but if you want to say it's A tier, like around the bottom of A tier, I could go with that as well, honestly, because of the Maxi and Fulas. I do like the idea that it's basically another Ash towards them. They only get one draw and then they stop. But you have to remember, it also stops you from adding any more cards as well. So you better hope you've added everything you needed. If not, well then it's a double-edged sword. Triple Tactics Thrust. I'm gonna still put it below Veiler, but I do think this is a great card. It's deck dependent. If you're playing a deck like Tenpai, Branded, Thrust is much better than Ghost Ogre and Veiler. Like, Thrust is powerful because then you can search your Harpies, Feather Dusters for Tenpai Dragons, or the grass is greener for Branded. Or yeah, Tillamont's another one. I would play Thrust over those two easily. Like, Thrust is powerful for those decks. But then when you're playing decks that don't have cards like what I've just said, or Raigekis, Dark Holes, Lightning Storms and whatnot, or Triple Tactics Talents, if you're not playing those types of cards, or not enough of them, then Thrust isn't as worth it. Thrust is a card where if you do have a normal spell that's so powerful for that deck, then it's a must. But if you're not, then you don't need it. So even though it's a great card, so I still put it as A tier. Veiler and Ghost Ogre are just a lot more viable for more decks. And lastly, Ghost Bell. I see some TCG hand trap tier lists and they don't rate Ghost Bell. But when I think of Ghost Bell, I swear there's a few decks that actually does hurt. Like, it can stop Low from Voiceless Voice going from the graveyard to the field. It stops Big Welcome Labyrinth. It can negate Tenpai Dragons in the battle phase, like the damage step, because it negates activation, not the effect. It stops Mathmech's trap card. It can stop some cards for Fire Kings, like Promethean Princess. I feel like Ghost Bell is a very solid card. See, the thing with Ghost Bell, it's not a card that stops the combo. It's usually the card that stops an extender. That's how I see it. It's like your opponent's doing their combos, blah blah blah, setting up, and then when they want to extend a combo, that's when Ghost Bell stops them, and usually can really damage the extending combo. So she's solid. I don't know why, like, I see some people just really underestimate her. But then again, TCG is ahead. Like, it has more cards and it's a completely different format to Master Duel. So maybe it's not as powerful in TCG. But Master Duel, I find her very solid. I could see her like a lower A tier, but then I'm thinking, would I play, well, I actually do play Ghost Bell in some decks. Is Droll better or worse than Ghost Bell? No, I'm gonna put Ghost Bell actually at low A tier just because of what I've said. It can hit quite a good amount of the top tier decks, and it does hit the best deck in the game currently, again, Tenpai Dragons. And honestly, I have a hatred towards Labyrinth, so anything that can stop Big Welcome Labyrinth, oh man, give it to me. give me that card. There you have it. I am pretty confident with this list. Again, if anyone just clicked on this video and skipped right to the end to see what I've put for the tier list, one, I didn't add all the hand traps. Anything below B tier I didn't add because I just think it's a waste of time. What's the point talking about them? No one's gonna play them. And two, I've just returned to the game in December after many months away. So from my experience and knowledge for playing this game in the past and for the last month and a half against the current meta decks, this is what I find the most impactful hand traps that can do the most against the top tier decks, but that are also good against rogue decks and tier 3s and whatnot, but mainly the top tiers. I would love to hear your opinion too. Anyone watching this video, let me know if you think I'm right, wrong. What would you change? What would you put differently? Is Ghost Ogre B tier, or is Ghost Bell actually B tier? Is Nibiru A tier? Let me know. I would love to read the comments and your opinions. But there you go. I hope this was a informative video for you, and I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, I would appreciate it if you left a thumbs up. And as I said earlier in the video, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel. Now, with that all being said and the tier list complete, it's time for me to go. Until 3 or 4 months when I do the next one. Let's see how the meta changes then. Slauser is outer.